Welcome to Sports Beat KC, the Kansas City Stars sports podcast and YouTube show where we talk Chiefs with the people in Kansas City media that know them best. That's columnist Sam McDowell and Vahe Gregorian and beat writer Jesse Newell. All right, Chiefs coming off the 27-20 victory over the Las Vegas Raiders in Sin City, moves them to 7-0. That is the best start for the team since the 2003 and 2013 teams each started 9-0. Anybody remember they have a common opponent that they lost to in the playoffs? Anybody remember who that was in those years?
Colts.
That would be the Colts.
That would be the Colts. Yes.
First of all, every playoff loss guess you should have for the Chiefs over like a 30-year span should be the Colts.
That's right. Absolutely.
One quick thing about that Colts game that the 2013 playoff 2014 game. I have to say this because I was new to Kansas City at the time. I'd been here about a year, and I didn't really understand the paranoia about the Chiefs. And they're winning that game 38-10, and I remember thinking, I don't know why people are think nothing is ever going to work out for Kansas City. And then we all know what happened. That was just such a great initiation to Kansas City for me. So thank you for that memory, Blair.
Well, the 2003 game was another kick in the groin for the Chiefs. That was the no punt game against Peyton Manning and the Colts at Arrowhead Stadium. So, a long history of playoff failures against the team from Indianapolis. However.
So if the Chiefs end up playing the Colts somehow in the playoffs, what you're saying is look out.
Gird your loins, yeah. Anyway, it makes it 13 straight triumphs for the Chiefs going back to last season. So 7-0 this year, their last 6 a year ago, and that's matches a franchise record. The latest win, out at Las Vegas, we often start these conversations talking about the offense, what Patrick Mahomes did or didn't do, and what wide receiver story or saga there is to talk about during this week. But I don't know how you can look at the game on Sunday and not talk about the goal line stand and the defense. Happened late in the third quarter. Chiefs were up only 17-13 at the time, and Patrick Mahomes' interception, is it 8th of the year? I know he's had one in all 8 games. Is it
9?
He had a game in which he had 2? So, okay.
Yeah, 9.
It's amazing. We'll get to that later. Return to the 3, and the Chiefs turn him back. So, incredible series of plays, incredible, terrible play calling by, I think, Antonio Pierce and the Raiders. But I had the sense when that sequence ended that the game had turned, and I thought it was a toss-up game until then, and then after that I felt pretty confident the Chiefs were going to win the game. Vahe, you wrote about the goal line stand, did you not?
I did, and the goal line stand in itself was monumental, but what was the encore that needed to happen was exactly what happened. An 87-yard drive, I think 10 minutes, 43 seconds. You think how demoralizing each first down of that drive would be as they kept moving the ball down. Now, they only got a field goal, but you felt like, that the game had pivoted at that point. There is something, I think underappreciated about the feeling of a goal line stand, though, isn't there? I mean, it's pretty rare you see that happen anymore. And maybe more rare yet, you see it on 4 straight running plays, as it turned out. I mean, the last play was supposed to be a pass, but Sam and Jesse might know this for sure. But as I saw the post-game comments from the Raiders side, I guess against the Rams, they also had a first and goal foiled with 4 straight pass attempts.
Right.
So it different ways to skin the cat, Blair, a term I know you like since you don't like cats. But it was a powerful moment. And when Wharton and Karlaftis combined to take down Minshew, and the celebration was a little bit like the sort of celebration you see when a game is won. And in a way, they won the game then.
This would be more comforting for our listeners if Blair did not own a cat, with Vahe making that comment. But now they all have to wonder about that exact comment and what's going on. No, I mean, I
You
think
mean the world's luckiest cat? Is that what you're referring to?
that's exactly what I'm referencing right there. Must be the luckiest to get to live with you. Where was I at? Where was I at? The run defense for the Chiefs. I mean, guys, I think that's something that needs to be underlined. Now, listen, the Raiders can't run a lick, and that's their problem. And to your guys' point with the play calling, they were passing a lick. So I was shocked that they kept trying to run the ball when it was not successful, had a super low success rate during the game, have a super low success rate during the season. And it might be one of those mentality drives, but you also want to use your brain and use your brain with what's been effective. And for a game, Gardner Minshew looked like his old self, like his 3 or 4 years ago self. So I was surprised they didn't throw it much, but this is an evolution of the Chiefs team. I mean, I remember defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo a couple of years ago when the Chiefs were just getting gashed against the run. And one of his quotes was sort of like what was in vogue in the NFL, which is sort of like, hey, it's okay if teams run against you a little bit. Pass defense is most important. You just got to kind of limit that. And it was true. I mean, pass offense is what wins in the NFL, but that has gone from that mindset, the Chiefs sort of hoping that they hold up there so teams pass it and they get a lead, to like they're shutting down every running game. And that's just the bottom line with what's happening this season. So I was looking at some of their numbers. They don't stack the box a lot, at least according to next gen stats. I mean, they don't completely sell out. And obviously teams aren't just throwing the ball like crazy against them in the passing game either. So the credit where it's due, these guys are making some plays individually to have this happen. And Steve Spagnuolo is doing some things schematically that other teams should be the envy of other teams. So another big stop for the Chiefs, but I think it's emblematic of what this season is, which is I saw that in DVOA, the Chiefs run defense right now is 3rd in the NFL. And that's not something we've said about this team for a long, long time. They deserve their flowers for that.
You said a week ago, I wonder, I don't know this. The Raiders lost to the Rams, and you're right, Vahe, they did have a goal line stand. I don't know how many of those passes were intended for Brock Bowers, but my gosh, he's a good player. And I wonder if the 4th down play had his number was called on that. I don't know. We'll never know, right? But that seemed like a waste of an opportunity there for the Raiders. With this run defense, I think the Chiefs are getting terrific and underrated, under the radar play from their tackles. And Tershawn Wharton is having, I think, a terrific season. Mike Pennell, I can't say enough good things about him. I think that guy, after the Chiefs went the length of the field to kick the field goal to make it a 7-point game, Pennell forced the fumble that Drew Tranquill fell on, and that led to the Chiefs' final touchdown. So I'm really high on what the Chiefs are doing in the middle with that run defense. And Chris Jones, of course, how do I fail to mention Chris Jones? But he often lines up outside as well. I think that like Pennell, Wharton, these guys, Malik Herring, they're just having they're having great seasons. Sam, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of their stuff doesn't really show up in the numbers. I mean, you look at Mike Pennell, he's got like 4 solo tackles all season in 7 games, but he's just that old school guy that tries to eat up blockers and lets their linebackers work, and their linebackers' strength. I mean, Leo Chenal and Nick Bolton are significantly better against the run than they are against the pass. And so it makes sense to move towards a personnel that is a Mike Pennell guy that lets your linebackers take care of the run game. I can't remember the last time we saw a 33-year-old have something close to a career season, but it's the best we've seen Mike Pennell play for the Chiefs.
So I wrote it down just to review, just to go back to the goal line stand. The name we haven't mentioned yet was pretty instrumental during that, and that's George Karlaftis. 1st and goal at the 3, Karlaftis and Tranquill tackle Alexander Madison for a 2-yard gain. Second and 1 at the 1, Madison no gain, Karlaftis and Nick Bolton. 3rd and 1 at the 1, Madison -2, that's Tranquill and Bolton. And then on 4th and goal at the 3, the sack. I don't know how they ended up divvying it up, but Wharton, I guess, got credit for the sack on that play. Chiefs had 5 sacks by 5 different players in that game after the Raiders did a nice job early moving the ball.
One thing, just to speak to the Karlaftis point a little bit too, Blair, that, I don't know what the official credit was on that. I do think it was Wharton but the play really was made by Karlaftis just plowing back the tackle and forcing Minshew up, and then Wharton was, making his own way there too. And it was a 1-2 punch. I think Wharton took him down over Karlaftis, but Karlaftis, he also had the sack at the end of the previous drive. I believe that's the sequence that really was a key stop. Also, the Raiders were in great position to score a touchdown after getting the ball deep in Chiefs territory from the punt return and the knucklehead penalty by Joshua Williams. That was a big stop too, and he sacked Minshew on third down and forced the field goal. I think he's been very active and I think really disruptive.
He's been way better this year, guys. I think me and Sam have kind of talked about this in the past. He really took advantage last year, especially in the previous year, of Chris Jones taking so much attention and sort of just working hard, pushing back the pocket. And then after 3.5 seconds, the quarterback falls in his lap and he gets the sack. And I think you've kind of sensed that with Chris Jones sometimes. He kind of knew that he was getting George Karlaftis' sacks, even if, George was just sort of, giving good energy and being there at the right place at the right time. But this year he's creating his own. And I think that's kind of to Vahe's point, that fourth down play where he kind of like tried to crowd surf and grab Minshew from the backside. I mean, that was a crazy effort. But we are just seeing more and more individual plays from George Karlaftis where it's like, that had nothing to do with Chris Jones. That had nothing to do with the rest of the defensive line. That had nothing to do with Steve Spagnuolo blitzing. That had to do with George Karlaftis making himself better in the last 2 years. So I agree with your main point, Vahe. And to Sam's earlier point and your point, Blair, about the interior, not only are they getting production from the interior, but they're doing it with guys that make no money. I mean, this is how you operate. The Chiefs pay their stars, and then you're getting above average play from Mike Pennell and Turk Wharton. I mean, this is how you build championship rosters. And as long as you have guys in place and the Joe Collins in place and the Steve Spagnuolos that continually get the best out of their rosters, especially when they have guys for a few years, that's a great formula for success.
Well, and the other guy that blows up third down was Derek Nottie. I mean, he doesn't get the tackle for that, but he's the one that disrupts third down. I mean, I think the biggest takeaway from that goal line stand is how many different players are involved in those 4 plays. I mean, Derek Nottie is probably the number one reason third down goes for -2 yards. Karlaftis, as Vahe mentioned, is probably the number one reason that fourth down fails. Tranquil was on second down, the number one reason that fails. And it was kind of a little bit of everyone on first down because the Raiders did gain 2 yards on first down. It wasn't it was the least successful play that the Chiefs had, but Derek Nottie, Drew Tranquil, and George Karlaftis are the guys that blow up the second, third, and fourth downs. This wasn't like a matchup thing where the Chiefs exposed one singular matchup. This is it's very symbolic of the Chiefs season that they've had defensively, that it's not one reason that they're, fifth in the league in yards against and fifth in points against. It's the collection of the whole.
And really until the previous game, they've been pretty fortunate with injuries, but then Jalen Watson, the quarterback, gets hurt and he's gone. And so this was a game that Najee Johnson and then Joshua Williams were asked to step up. And Joshua Williams, who's, all 3 of those guys came through the same draft class, right? The 2022 draft class. And Watson had established, himself as the leader of the group, and it was playing well through the first 5-6 games before getting injured. And then Najee Johnson leaves the game with a concussion against the Raiders, and Joshua Williams gets the second most snaps by a corner. Had a couple of penalties, right? One was as a member of the return special teams on the return, but also a penalty. What's the consensus of opinion of Joshua Williams' game, and can the Chiefs go forward with him as a number 2 cornerback?
Just to clarify the penalties, you're right, Blair. The one was, and why I called it a knucklehead penalty before, was he threw the returner down on the sideline after the punt return.
Right.
And that was, so unnecessary roughness. And then I think you guys might remember better, but I think it was a third down play where it was a holding that gave the Raiders a first down. It may not have been third down, but it was vital down there. It was in the red zone, I believe. As for the rest, I didn't notice him much the other way. The guys have probably analyzed him, though. I didn't really notice one way or another what he did other than those plays.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, like, his PFF grade's okay. Listen, this is their fourth choice at cornerback, right? So like, okay is probably as good as you can hope for. You don't want the third down penalty to negate a stop on defense, obviously. But the Chiefs do put a lot of pressure on their corners, and they still played a ton of man coverage out on the outside and press coverage, which the NFL Next Gen stats sort of indicated afterwards. So, was it an excellent standout game for him? No, but were there the busts that would have potentially led to a Chiefs loss? I would say no to that as well, and that's why the Chiefs were thin there. I mean, again, Joshua Williams was in the battle to be the quarterback too, and it's obvious he finished third in that ranking, as the season went along. So for the Chiefs to still have him available and have him as a fourth round pick and be in their system and be able to step in, I think that's a good sign, but it's obviously not the place the Chiefs want to be.
And I should mention too, Chris Roland Wallace played as well. He had the interception a week ago against the 49ers and got more snaps on Sunday. So Chiefs made a move on defense this week. It wasn't at cornerback. It was at defensive end / outside linebacker back in the old 3-4 days, but he'll be playing defensive end for the Chiefs. Joshua Uche. I know he prefers Joshua. I hope I get the last name right. Uche.
It's Uche, yeah.
Okay. Rush in with the Patriots. Didn't have good numbers this year, but a couple years ago had excellent numbers, 11.5 sacks. So what to make of this trade? And I think my initial reaction is you can help your secondary by improving your pass rush, and that's what the Chiefs did here.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't had great production from their defensive ends. I mean, it's a commentary on the current status of that. I mean, Vahe mentioned earlier they had 5 sacks from 5 different players. This is them suggesting that they don't think that's repeatable. And they haven't repeated last year's success in terms of pressures and sacks either. I mean, Karlaftis has been really good these last 2 games. His pressure rate is down from what it was a year ago. And before these last 2 games, it was down like 3%. Mike Dana, he's not been healthy the past couple of weeks. He had the second lowest pressure rate in the league. So they need better depth at that position. And let's face it, they tried to get it with the first round pick a year ago with Felix Anudike-Uzomah. And this has to be a commentary on him as well, because if he was developing at the pace that he should be developing, that they anticipated when they drafted him, they wouldn't need to make this deal, because we know that Charles Omenihu is anticipated to be part of the plan late in the season. It's probably going to be late in November, maybe a week or two earlier, a week or two later, but somewhere around that time where I think they'll get him back. But you don't know exactly what you're getting from a player who missed training camp, who hasn't practiced yet. Like there's a lot of unknown, even if he was productive for you last year. So I think it speaks to the lack of production they've gotten from that position so far this year.
Add to the unknown Mike Dana's injury as well, because he's missed 2 straight games. They haven't put him on injured reserve yet, but to Sam's point, if Uche comes in and could potentially let them heal up Dana and not force him back too early and lose him, that could be part of this equation as well. And Sam, I know maybe you want to briefly talk about too. I know you got some information about the compensation where it goes down in the book as a 6th-round pick for the Chiefs, but in the end might not actually be that.
Yeah. So, it's a good point, Jesse. I mean, so there's a chance they could get a comp pick back in the offseason because he was a free agent last year and he'd signed back with the Patriots, I think, for $3 million. This is not going to be a significant cost hit under the Chiefs cap. So that may negate the potential for compensation, but there is a chance that Uche brings back a 7th-round comp pick next year. In which case, that's, I think, why we saw the Chiefs trade a 2026 draft pick rather than 2025, because that compensation would not come immediately. It would also come in 2026. And therefore, there's a chance we're looking at a 2026 draft, in which case they just have a comp pick in the 7th round rather than their own 6th-round pick. So it really has the potential to lessen the cost here.
Let me put this out there too. Look, NFL injuries are such a mysterious thing, and getting information on them is, we all know how difficult that is. But Sam, you just mentioned it. Mike Dana is still out with the pectoral injury, and you're right. And Jesse, you mentioned he's not on IR yet. That's correct. He's not on IR. So he gets mentioned in the injury updates every week. But Joe Tooney injured his pectoral muscle at the end of, toward the end of last year, right? Or maybe it was in the playoffs, right?
It was in the Buffalo game, yeah.
Yeah, and then missed, through the Super Bowl. And I do believe, Jesse, you have better memory than me on this. A lot of, OTAs, and it was
Part of training camp. He was part of training camp, yeah.
Yeah, training camp too.
Look, again, the degree of injury, no idea, right? And we're not going to likely get that from the Chiefs. Is it a tear versus a strain, that sort of thing? But I don't know. It's just something to keep an eye on. And I guess pectoral muscle injuries can be kind of tricky. All right. It was also the Chiefs' debut game for DeAndre Hopkins, and I don't know. 23 snaps. I didn't think he would get that much, and I thought he looked really good on his 2 receptions. It was just a couple of catches for a total of 29 yards, but I thought he looked really good. He looked like a big time wide receiver on both of those plays. And to be honest with you, I hadn't seen that, a guy with that kind of size. I haven't seen that from the Chiefs for a while. And Jesse, I know you wrote about it. They had to be happy with what they saw on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, we can all talk about how he looked good to us, but I'm telling you, the people he opened the eyes of were Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. And afterwards, those are the guys that are singing his praises. Patrick said the first catch was high level stuff because he adjusted in the zone. That actually Las Vegas played the play pretty well. But this is what the Chiefs do: is if Patrick Mahomes sees something and he's on the same page with his receiver, they can adjust post snap and still fit into a window and get guys open on particular plays. And this is probably what we're going to see from Hopkins. We talk so much about him being a contested catch guy. That's part of his career. That's what he's done so well. But he could be a good fit in the Chiefs offense because he knows ball. You know what I mean? Like, he understands, he sees defenses. And so it'll be a matter of still catching up with the playbook. It'll help him out to have an extra day here with Monday Night Football to be able to dive into that for the Chiefs to get him more practices. But we don't often hear this. You guys, from being around Andy Reid, sometimes by being around him, you can pick up on things that you don't normally hear. Twice after the game, he's talked about that DeAndre is going to play a lot more next week. I think he was really impressed by what he saw as well. And we don't usually hear those promises from Andy Reid. So, yeah, as quick as he can get the playbook down, as quick as he can learn the plays, the formations, all that stuff, I'm with you, Blair. I think they're going to get him out here. I think he's going to be a huge part of their packages moving forward, and potentially could be a big benefit just because of the way that he understands football and it sees it the same way that Patrick does. It allows them some of that post-snap success that we've seen from Mahomes and Kelsey as well.
Plus, I mean, it's that the most interesting thing I thought Patrick Mahomes said was that you can tell by his body language where he's going to go. And the question, I think, is there's 2 questions whenever a wide receiver comes in. One is what Jesse mentioned: how quickly can they learn the playbook? I think it's a lot easier to learn the playbook when the plays are called for you. And this is a receiver that's going to have a lot of plays called for him. So I've always thought that he would learn the playbook at an accelerated pace. The second is, at what point can you develop that connection with your quarterback? And so Patrick Mahomes saying that he could tell on the play that Jesse highlighted, that first catch of the game, he could tell by his body language that he was going to stop in that zone. Like, that accelerates that process too. And just because you're a veteran does not mean that that's an element of your game. But the fact that stood out to Mahomes on the very first snap he's ever played with these guys, I thought was significant. And the second catch, Blair, you said it, but there's not a Chiefs wide receiver that we've seen make it an all hands catch like that on the run and needing to tap their toes. It's not the type of wide receiver they've had in this offense.
A couple things just to add on to that. I was isolating on him from the snap on that first pass, and all of it was just a thing of beauty because the conviction with which Mahomes threw that ball too, on his first attempt to a guy he met, he started practicing with 48 hours before, right? And the sense of synchronicity there was just very promising. Now, they didn't have it a couple times, and I think these are plays that are going to become part of the repertoire soon. Patrick, it was hard to tell initially whether Hopkins might have run a different angle than Patrick anticipated, or if Patrick misfired. But afterwards, Patrick said he overthrew the one ball, or just missed him. But there was another play where Patrick forced it to Worthy on the right sideline, and I was kind of isolating on Hopkins at the time too. And to watch the way he broke free across the middle and what he had to work through with the defender to get there, that to me was sort of the stuff you don't that's not very common. And I think next time around, after seeing that on film, Patrick's going to go there. So all these things for 48, 72 hours, whatever they had together, I think really bode well. Everything you guys said and all this, I picture him being like a 5 or 6 catch, 80 to 90 yard guy a number of times this season.
And
they'd take that.
Heck
absolutely.
yeah.
And not to make too much of one guy in game one guy, I think it's good for UVI to point out the misconnection they had, because that stalled a drive too. That would have been a big play, and you can't have too many of those, especially the way the Chiefs are playing offense, where it's just first down, first down, first down, first down. One of those incompletions really hurts you. But talking to the locker room with the guys, Xavier Worthy said he's ready. He's really excited to tap into DeAndre's knowledge, and also said that he was kind of down about a couple of his drops, and DeAndre came over to him on the sideline and said, "Hey, pick your head up, let's go," that sort of thing. So that sort of thing can help the Chiefs as well. And at least through one game, I thought a really telling thing, if you go back and watch it, was you talk about DeAndre Hopkins being open. He was open. Even Patrick Mahomes said he was open in the end zone when Travis Kelce caught that touchdown. Could have sulked, could have said, "Hey, this would be my one chance to get a big touchdown my first game." He went right over to Travis Kelce, started pounding on his chest, celebrating with him. A lot of what the Chiefs do right is getting the right guys in the building. And so far, so good, I think, when it comes to that mentality as well. Some very good and very promising things off the field as well.
Okay, a couple little maybe points of at least note. I don't know about concern yet, at least for this first one. Kareem Hunt had his fewest yards and yards per carry in a game for the Chiefs, with 59 yards rushing and 2.8 yards per carry. Listen, the Raiders gear up to stop the run. Is there any concern that they're just wearing them down? And should the Chiefs, should Andy Reid back off a little bit and use a little bit more, I don't know, P. Ryan, Steele, anybody else, and save Kareem Hunt for a longer haul?
I would just say, go ahead, Sam. Go ahead.
Well, I think it's a sign that Isaiah Pacheco is going to be back, because you wouldn't be running your best running back into the ground if you didn't have confidence that he was not going to be your best running back in a few weeks or a couple of weeks, however long it's going to be. I'm actually interested, when we talk to Andy Reid on Thursday, if Pacheco's window of 21 days is going to open this week, or if they're going to wait another week. But look, the reason the Chiefs running game is good is not because of Kareem Hunt. It's because of what Jesse pointed out 2 weeks ago. It's because of Joe Thuney, Trey Smith, and Creed Humphrey on the interior. When you look at the numbers for Kareem Hunt, and look, he's a terrific story. It's great that he's had this bounce back to his career. When you look at rush yards over expectation per attempt, for example, he's 8th worst in the game among 52 running backs. The Chiefs are 23rd in the NFL on yards after contact this year. And we all think that's Kareem Hunt's strength, is getting yards after contact. They are creating holes for the running back. I don't think it's real significant who's back there. And if you think he gives you the best chance, the thing he does really well is he does not get negative plays. Right. He does not get tackled in the backfield very frequently at all, which again is partly because of this offensive line, but that is partly because he runs so downhill on his carries. And this is an offense that has thrived on not getting behind the chains this year. It was the biggest problem with their offense last year, was getting behind the chains so frequently. And I think that's probably a major allure to why they're using him so frequently.
We did that breakdown last week, real quick, by me and Brett Tabo about that. And Sam, you're right. The vision right now and his ability to avoid negative plays is the biggest thing for him. Real quick note: I was in the locker room late last week, there by myself. Isaiah Pacheco was in there, kind of ran over to Rick Burkholder, who was the trainer, and kind of seemed pretty excited to be around him and talk to him. So again, I'm no soothsayer to know exactly what that means, but I'm with Sam. I would anticipate we're going to see Isaiah Pacheco here sooner rather than later, at least based off his body language in the locker room and how excited he seems.
I would only say I've been more impressed with Kareem Hunt's burst in a couple of these games than I expected to be, that he had some of that. I don't know that I saw a lot of opportunity for that in this last game. And I think that's part of why, I think things open up for the passing game a little bit too, though. The Raiders, I do think, really committed to churning down the run. You guys may see it differently, but I think it's one of the things that the Chiefs have as an advantage, that they are multifaceted in ways they can try to attack you.
Okay, just a couple minutes left. Let's end it on this. Do we see a case to replace Wanye Morris with Kingsley Suamataia at left tackle? Morris coming off of I think a rough game for him. Is it time to go back to Kingsley and to give him, the shot that they did at the beginning of the year?
The answer to that question is dependent on something we're in the dark about, which is what has been Kingsley Suamataia's reaction to practice since he got benched. Like, has he worked to get better, knowing what his faults are? Or is there still been, there's going to be a mental grind whenever he gets back in the game for the first time, but I still think that he's their most talented left tackle. And so for the playoffs, I still think he's probably the guy that I'd like out there, but the only way he's at his best is if he's mentally at his best and believes he can play at this level, because the last time we saw him, there was some evidence that he was spooked and did not think that he was good enough to play at this level. So if he's past that, then I wouldn't mind seeing Kingsley Suamataia again, but only the guys that are around him every day can really gauge whether or not he's in that place right now.
That was the Bengals game, the end of the Bengals game for
Kingsley. Just real quick, too, out of guys that played half their team snaps, 157 linemen this last week for Pro Football Focus. Wanye Morris was 154th. So if you were going to make a move, this is a week to potentially do it, because as bad as it seemed for Wanye on game day, it was probably that bad or worse.
And the penalties. The penalties weren't even really, like, a couple of those penalties were soft. Like, we're not just Blair, you're not just asking this question because of the penalties. Like, it was a thoroughly rough day for him.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, we'll look for that on Monday Night Football when the Chiefs play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who come into the game on a 2-game losing streak and don't have either Chris Godwin or Mike Evans at wide receiver. Meant to get into that a little bit more, but we have run out of time. Thanks to Vahe Gregorian, Sam McDowell, Jesse Newell, and to our producers, Monty Davis and Randy Mason. Thanks for listening. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think of the show. And we'll be back soon with another Sports Beat KC, where we talk sports in and around Kansas City.